So, today, folks, we're going to be discussing freedom of speech, and this will be the First Amendment we'll be working on for your booklets. So, right now, you should have your cover sheet done and be working on your table of contents as well as starting Article 1 and Article 2. Beginning with Amendment 1, and before I do, I want to remind you that there were originally 12 amendments proposed by Mr. Madison. And the first one dealt with reapportionment with the House of Representatives. And the second one dealt with congressional pay raises, which of course will become an amendment. But originally in 1789, it wasn't. So, looking at Amendments 3 through 12, this is now our Amendments 1 through 10, or what we would know as the Bill of Rights. So, Amendment 1 is freedom of speech, press, assembly, religion, and petition. And an easy way for you to remember those is to, of course, take the first letter of each one, SPARP. It spells out the acronym SPARP. So, if you remember SPARP, you'll remember speech, press, assembly, religion, and petition. And Amendment 1 goes like this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Who determines what the Constitution means? Well, the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution and its general meaning, and the Supreme Court also balances the rights of the individual with the needs of society. What exactly is the rights of individuals and what are the needs of society? Well, our government allows you to practice religion without many restrictions. But if a religion does not allow the mouth to be covered because it says that's how evil demons escape our body, and a pandemic strikes requiring us to wear masks, unlikely, but it could happen, well, then the needs of our society to be safe far outweighs the freedoms of your religion. So the government, of course, can then step in, which means our Supreme Court is analyzing and interpreting a document that is over 230 years old to fit the needs that the framers could never imagine. And those interpretations from nine individuals affects over 330 million people living in this country currently. Looking at the balance of need with individuals and society, we look at speech. Can we really say what we want? The answer is yes and no. And just because society finds something that someone says reprehensible, that doesn't mean that an individual cannot say it. We will look further into this issue in a moment. With religion, what is the difference between a religion and a cult? The United States does not recognize any one religion, nor do we have an official religion. But the Amish are the only religious sect that the government rarely interferes with. Um, think about our schooling and our education. The Amish have dictated high school. They've dictated those of you who go to Votech. Again, the Amish religion has provided us, but at the same time, they are pretty much off limits to the government, and the government likes it that way, it seems. Um, when we talk about property, can we really do what we want with our property? Again, the answer is yes and no. Look at the three buildings here. In the top right corner is the Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka, Kansas. They are against gay rights and will post signs on their buildings stating such. They even post web addresses on the side of their building. What if you lived across the street from that church? How would that make you feel as a homeowner? Well, look at the picture on the bottom left corner. And that is the house that's across the street from Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka, Kansas. Um, at what point are we allowing individuals or groups to have that kind of say? And, you know, does it bring down the property value? Do you have a right as a property owner? Um, then let's look at the most recognizable house to many of you that live in Mount Pleasant area, and it's the Trump House that's located in Latrobe. Is it art? Is it a political statement? Or is it an eyesore? And lastly, which we will not cover much of, is the taxation in our country. We have taxes that we pay all the time. I pay a tax to go to work in Mount Pleasant. Is that fair? So we'll look more about that. not necessarily in detail, but later on in this class. Now, going back to the First Amendment, as I read earlier, the five rights again are speech, press, assembly, religion, and petition. Uh, the reason I'm inserting this again is so that you start to remember what SPARP is. What is speech? Well, speech can be verbal and nonverbal. It can be a statement of fact or it can be a lie. It can be loud or as quiet as the middle finger. It can be a tattoo. It can be a slogan on a shirt. You can say what you want, when you want, and how you want, as long as it does not infringe on the rights of another. To define infringe or infringement, it's an act that limits or undermines something or encroaches on something or someone else. That's what infringement is. Looking at the pictures I placed here, the picture on the left is the Tinker case, which we'll learn about in chapter 13. It's also the painting for those of you in class that's in front of my room. And then there's the picture on the right, which is the Morse case. It's about a group of students that hung a sign up that said "Bong hits for Jesus," and they were expelled from school. We'll learn more about that later. As I read to you in the First Amendment, Congress shall make no laws abridging the freedom of speech. What you see here is a member of the Westboro Baptist Church whose members go around and picket funerals of dead soldiers. And the courts have ruled they are perfectly legal to do that. How would you react if they did this at your loved one's funeral? Is free speech truly free? What can a person say? Well, say any political belief. Unless it's in the public education setting. As a teacher, I may not share my political beliefs. I may not wear or support a candidate in class. I may not influence you with politics. But and that goes true with any personal opinion. But what if you see me in a political rally? Well, then that's okay. In the court's eyes, if I'm doing something outside of school in the natural realm of my day, then that's okay. Um, Protesting, we're going to save this one. We'll talk about that one later. You can say things about someone that is true, but if you are saying something that is secondhand information that someone else told you is true, but you don't know for a fact, and it turns out that that information is false, then you can be held accountable for your speech, not necessarily what that person told you. Believe it or not, it is illegal to burn the American flag. It's considered by the Supreme Court to be symbolic speech. Other forms of symbolic speech are picketing, wearing armbands, and holding signs or placards. As much as we may disagree with the practice of burning flags, there is no law against it. However, it is possible that you could be charged with arson, and facing that type of legal argument could be insurmountable. The court has also ruled that some racist and hate slogans are permissible. This is known as hate speech. And now there's two types of hate speech. Just keep this in mind. And just because you find something offensive doesn't mean it necessarily is illegal. Hate speech is written or spoken communication that belittles a group based on its characteristics such as race, gender, or sexual orientation. Lastly, free speech means means someone might say something you disagree with, and there is nothing you can do about it, even if your feelings are hurt, unless the actions of the individuals rise to the point of inciting a riot or violence. So, what if the KKK holds a rally in the city of Pittsburgh and begins using racist terms towards the crowd? Isn't that considered inciting violence? The answer would be no. You chose to attend the rally or counter protest, so you should have expected those things to occur. We may not agree with the court's decision, but it does protect everyone's rights. When it comes to school speech, SCOTUS has upheld regulations as to time, place, and manner of speech, provided they are reasonable. This includes the age and maturity of students as an important factor, whether they're in kindergarten or whether they're seniors in high school. The extent to which the student's speech is in question poses a substantial threat of disruption is also factored in. A student that threatens to violently hurt or kill a teacher without naming the teacher has been found to be free speech when said speech is in written form, but spoken aloud, and that student is expelled and charged. Schools and the court also must decide whether the speech is sexually vulgar or obscene. This includes speeches by kids running for student government or speaking at pep rallies. And lastly, whether the speech, if allowed as part of a school activity or function, would be contrary to the basic educational mission of the school. We will learn later on how a group of students wrote an article about divorce and were suspended for doing such an article. And believe it or not, the court upheld those suspensions and, in essence, gave the principal or the school more power over the student body. Let's talk about the limitations of speech. You cannot do the following: threaten to blow up a plane, school, or kill or harm the president. In fact, mere words associated with terrorist organizations have pretty much gotten a lot of people in trouble since 9/11 occurred. People used to say, "it's the bomb," when referring to something good. Not anymore, they can't. Now they do teach in safety classes that if you are being attacked, to yell fire, not help or rape, as people are more inclined to want to see a fire than to help anyone else who's in distress. Um, Keep that in mind. Yell fire. You cannot sexually harass an individual. Just because a person wears what one would consider a provocative outfit doesn't give you the right to judge them based on what they wear. Our country has become quite liberated in terms of our clothing requirements. Three, create too much social chaos. Speech that incites violence or promotes lawbreaking is not protected speech. The rioters in the cities who chanted to burn down police stations, uh, they're being charged with domestic terrorism today. There's no place for hate, as Mr. Gambito always says. Then there is crude language in public. That type of language, usually used metaphorically, is not protected speech. Yes, we can constantly hear it on television or in the movies or in the hallways here at school. It's more than just dropping the F bomb, or I guess you can't say bomb anymore, F word. It is the act of being descriptive. Speaking of school, language that is considered vulgar and directed toward a teacher, not at the teacher, is prohibited. Schools are meant to teach social norms, and although the Supreme Court has sided with students on certain issues and even stated that kids don't shed their rights at the school doors, schools are obligated to reform students who stray from this norm. Now, on the flip side, kids will use slurs in schools. It can be in the form of what's most commonly called by other kids slut shaming. Just because a student chooses to wear something or to act a certain way doesn't permit you or anyone else to put their values on their life on you. That, according to the Supreme Court, is not allowed. It could be a form of hate depending on the person or their lifestyle, even their race. Just because something is protected in public doesn't mean it's protected here in school. And that means if you try and defame someone based on any spoken untruth, you can be charged with slander. If you weren't there, if you don't know firsthand, then don't repeat or gossip. That can get you fired, suspended, sued, and lose the respect and integrity from the people that know you. However, there is one way that you can avoid trouble, but not necessarily altogether. Say I tell a class that I like the fictitious actor named Ron Sekerchek, who portrays gay men in all of his movies, and that he definitely has to be a true life gay to pull off that fine acting. Well, can I get in trouble if he is not gay and I said he was? Yes and no. Yes, because the district wouldn't want me to characterize gay people and make people feel uncomfortable, and no, because my audience wouldn't affect his career. Now, if actor Ron Sekerchek said on his award speech that he was inspired to be gay in his movies based on his teacher he had who was gay, KJ Svidron, well, that could get me fired under Pennsylvania law. And of course, I could also sue him because his audience can reach millions where my audience can reach what? Three Twitter followers and a handful of kids in a hybrid class. When does speech cross the line then? When it causes harm either physically or mentally. I tell the story of a girl who was bullied in ninth grade when I was growing up by other girls because she was chubby. So the girl began to throw up after every meal, which led to her, of course, starving herself. And I believe they call this, anorexia nervosa or bulimia at the same, could be both. Um, Anyhow, Calling someone fat or chubby isn't necessarily illegal, but if it's done repeatedly and that turns into a mental effect, um, and also a physical effect, you can then, yes, be held responsible. There are recorded times when people have been charged with harm based on their speech. The case of this distraught young woman in Seattle who had her heart broken. She blocked a bridge with her car and threatened to jump off the bridge. Um, People originally were sympathetic to her, but after several hours of backed up traffic, the onlookers began to chant for her to jump. They were saying, "Jump, you bee, jump." They were tired of waiting for 3 to 4 hours. So she did jump and she died. And those people who told her to jump were all charged with aiding in her death. Are you starting to see the picture here? One other thing to mention is clear and present danger. I mentioned this earlier in the video, and it's just as important. The government has the right to punish people that invoke anti war speech. This is turned from direct incitement, which states the government can only restrict speech when the speech in question promotes lawless action or mob violence. Yes, mob violence, that same mob violence that went across our country like a wave. We will stop here for the day. We barely covered speech and have four more rights to go over. Tomorrow we'll attempt to cover the last four, then have 2 work days for our articles. Stay safe, Mount Pleasant. And if you happen to get this far in the video, put 412 after your next daily bell ringer post and get some bonus points. Have a great day.